The 21st century has already begun for Asia. The global south is getting stronger every day, and the economic axis has long since shifted from the west to the east. 65% of the 33 million tons of cargo transported daily across the oceans is handled in Asian ports. The economic rise of Asian powers, primarily China, has brought about a revolutionary, not evolutionary, change in the global economic order that has been dominated by the West for the past 200 years. Western hegemony, particularly since 1945, has been characterized by a dark history of colonialism and domination, with the West imposing its global dominance through the World Bank, IMF, and the American Navy, as well as through control mechanisms like banks, the SWIFT payment system, currencies like the dollar and euro, transportation corridors, primarily maritime, technology, industry, and other economic connections, effectively turning developing countries into vassal states. The core of the model was to divide and rule. If a country stepped outside the geopolitical or economic order, it faced either a colored revolution or armed intervention. The partnership between the economic and geopolitical orders aimed to prevent continental powers from developing naval power. In this context, the primary goals were to prevent China's access to the sea and closer relations with Russia, as well as to prevent closer ties between Germany and Russia in Europe. In this pursuit, the Russia-Ukraine war achieved the first objective. The EU's strategic independence has now been eliminated. However, while the western half of the Eurasian continent, namely the EU, is being abandoned to the US, Asia itself has significantly strengthened its defense mechanisms against the US and the EU. The significant erosion of US power, particularly following the Russia-Ukraine and Israel-Hamas wars, has also contributed to this process. Today, an alternative system to the Western-centric economic system led by the US since 1945 is being built. In 2006, Russia, China, Brazil, and India formed a global economic initiative by creating the BRIC Group. South Africa joined the group in 2010, and the initiative was renamed BRICS. The goal of the initiative was to bring together developing economies to counterbalance the political and economic power of wealthy nations from North America and Western Europe, whose history is stained with colonialism and imperialism, and then to provide the economic infrastructure for a multipolar geopolitical world order. On August 22, 2023, during the 15th BRICS Summit hosted by South Africa, BRICS added 4 new members to its existing 5. Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, UAE, joined the group. On February 28, 2024, the BRICS chair and Russia's ambassador to Moscow announced that 25 countries were on a waiting list for BRICS membership. Today, BRICS Plus includes 9 countries that represent 45% of the world's population, 36% of global economic purchasing power parity, 25% of world exports, and 44% of crude oil production. The group includes global and continental nuclear powers like China and Russia, as well as continental economic and military powers like India, Brazil, and South Africa. With the latest expansion, countries controlling 2 critical waterways, the Strait of Hormuz and the Suez Canal, Iran, UAE, and Egypt, have joined BRICS Plus. Perhaps the most significant characteristic of BRICS Plus is that it is made up of states that are the current representatives of the world's oldest civilizations and cultures. In 2014, the BRICS countries established the new Development Bank to strengthen infrastructure and provide credit. Undoubtedly, the bank, which emerged as a competitor to the IMF, stands as a manifesto against the US-led Bretton Woods system implemented after 1945. Additionally, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, established in 2015 with China as the leader and 81 members, was formed as an alternative to the World Bank. It is important to remember that the presidents of the World Bank and the deputy managing directors of the IMF have always been American citizens. The activation of these 2 banks, the first from Asia to offer an alternative to the Western financial system, demonstrates the extent of change. The most significant feature of the Shanghai-based New Development Bank is its ability to provide loans to member countries in their own currencies. By the end of 2022, the bank had provided developing countries with approximately $32 billion for infrastructure projects such as roads, bridges, and railways. Many Asian and African countries, most of which were formerly Western colonies, have benefited the most from China's financial support. These projects not only have economic advantages, but also have a strategic impact. BRICS Plus also encourages large-scale projects among its members. For instance, in recent weeks, Iran and Pakistan signed a contract for an oil pipeline, and Egypt and the UAE signed a $35 billion urban development project. Another objective of BRICS Plus is to weaken the US and EU's freedom to impose sanctions and economic embargoes on countries they see as conflicting with their geopolitical and economic interests. Russia, Iran, and China are the countries most exposed to US and EU sanctions. They view the development of BRICS Plus as crucial not only for economic reasons, but also for geopolitical ones. In this sense, BRICS Plus has become a global challenge to the Pax Americana, established with the Israel-Hamas war, and its inseparable component, the Washington Consensus. Undoubtedly, the most significant goal in this challenge is to weaken, at least regionally, and ultimately eliminate the dominance of the dollar in international trade. At the 16th BRICS Plus summit to be held in Kazan, Russia, in October 2024, the following are expected to be key topics: promoting BRICS currencies, fostering cooperation between tax and customs systems, enhancing the role of BRICS Plus in the international financial system, and developing cooperation between banks. The growth, effectiveness, and particularly the move away from the dollar by BRICS Plus will have a significant negative impact on Western economies dominated by the US and EU, particularly in banking and finance, technology and financial communication, international trade and investment, consumer goods and retail, and travel and tourism. BRICS Plus also has a $100 billion support fund established by member countries within the new development bank to address balance of payments issues. India has begun work on establishing a new currency for BRICS Plus. Additionally, many BRICS Plus nations conduct trade among themselves using their own national currencies. Hydrocarbon products are at the forefront of this trade. For instance, 95% of trade between China and Russia is conducted in their national currencies. On January 30, 2024, the UAE and China conducted their first-ever trade transaction using digital currency, dirham. Digital currency is becoming a particularly appealing option for Global South countries. The primary reason governments are moving away from the dollar is that the US's position as the reserve currency holder has emboldened them to freely impose sanctions and embargoes on target countries. The US's actions of isolating these nations from the global financial system, excluding them from SWIFT, and freezing their foreign exchange reserves have accelerated the process of moving away from the dollar. While moving away from the dollar lessens the impact of sanctions, it also reduces the threat of these countries being isolated from the world. Although the dollar currently holds a 60% share of global reserves, followed by the euro at 20% and the renminbi at 3%, BRICS Plus countries are working to establish a basket of digital financial instruments backed by their own national currencies. The majority of nations seeking membership in BRICS Plus are Global South countries reacting to the US's destructive and divisive policies, particularly those implemented after 2001. These nations include Algeria, Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria, and Senegal in Africa. If Nigeria is admitted to BRICS Plus during the October summit, half of the African economy will be under BRICS Plus control. In South America, alongside Brazil, Argentina also expressed a desire to join during the previous president's term. However, the new pro-American president halted the process. Lastly, Mexico recently announced its intention to attend the 2024 BRICS Plus summit. If expansion continues at this pace, BRICS Plus is expected to control more than 35% of the global economy by 2028. This value will surpass the combined value added of the G7 nations, making BRICS Plus a highly significant player in shaping the global economy. This will have geopolitical ramifications. Undoubtedly, India remains the most significant player in BRICS Plus, with the potential to influence global power dynamics. India stands out with its young population, information technology sector, and geographical location. India is expected to overtake China as the world's most populous country by 2025. It is also projected to have the world's third largest economy by 2030. India's neutrality and its growing global influence make it a critical player in BRICS Plus. India's membership strengthens the bloc's position as a counterbalance to the West. Turkey, a country with a rich history and cultural heritage, is situated at the crossroads of civilizations. However, Turkey's economic woes, social problems, and political instability in recent years can be attributed to its excessive focus on the West and its adherence to outdated policies. Turkey's economic and political dependence on the West has prevented it from taking advantage of the opportunities presented by the rise of Asia. The time has come for Turkey to re-evaluate its foreign policy and economic orientation. Joining BRICS Plus would present Turkey with a historic opportunity to revitalize its economy, diversify its trade partnerships, and regain its historical position in the world. Turkey's membership in BRICS Plus would not only benefit the country economically but would also strengthen the bloc's geopolitical standing. The 21st century is undeniably the Asian century. The economic and political center of gravity is shifting eastward. Joining BRICS Plus is a strategic necessity for Turkey to ensure its place in the new world order. Turkey's future lies with the rising economies of Asia, not with the declining West. The West's era of dominance is coming to an end, and a new multipolar world order is emerging. Turkey must seize this historic moment and embrace the Asian century by joining BRICS Plus.